and contribute essentially to the continent's success in exploiting its trade potential. The African Women Network on the African Continental Free Trade Area (AfTA) seeks to unbundle a special focus on promoting opportunities in trade for women in Nigeria and Africa in the context of trade. Launching a new network of women in trade will aim at providing essential skills necessary to engage in successful intra-Africa free trade in Nigeria. The president of the African Women Network, Marie Thiam, urged women to come together across global sectors to actively participate and partake in Africa's free trade area for economic enrichment and development.
For decades, African women have been trapped in cycles of poverty due to several underlying factors, including unequal access to education, production factors, and market facilities, unfair labor, underpaid or unpaid labor, harmful cultural practices, and limited legal protections against entrenched gender inequitable practices. With the implementation of the African Continental Free Trade Area, launched in January 2021, expectations are high for expanded prospects for women-led businesses, but for women in all areas.
And so if AfTA is one of the key vehicles, that is intended to push the development of Africa forward, then we must ensure that AfTA is gender sensitive and it is women inclusive. But so far, it appears that the whole part of the agreements, it's gender blind. For those people, and that it follows the concept in some quarters that trade has no gender.
Please, can you begin to look for how to develop your own gender data bank in trade? Yeah. It's a challenge for the network. You don't need to wait for government. Sometimes it is your input that you now send to National Center for Women Development. This is an agency meant for you. Challenge them. Where is the data bank and the money given to them for the data bank? If you don't have, a data bank of women in trade as experts, the one you have done, give it to them and let them actually, impute it into the data bank.
But you must use economic integration to increase your production opportunity. Else, all those after ECOWAS is to total loss. So please, women, what can you do to better your opportunity now? It's not an area of complaint. So that is the issue.
Women also play a key role in creating community cohesion, sustainable peace and stability, along with the facilitation of trade and peace as an enabler for sustainable development. Norma Omeje for Moneyline with Nancy.
The federal government's crude oil earnings has increased by 449.93 billion naira in the months of December 2023 and January 2024. And this is according to data from the latest reports on Nigeria's oil production. This indicates that Nigeria's oil output maintained a northward movement in the months of December 2023 and January 2024. The U.S. Special Envoy to Sudan, Tom Perello, will visit a few African countries, including Sudan and the Middle East, from March 11 to March 25. Perello said this visit came from the urgent need to end the war in Sudan and get humanitarian access to all the Sudanese people.
In the White House, I'm heading out to the region because we feel the urgent need to end this war and get humanitarian access to all the Sudanese people. So I'll be spending the next couple of weeks listening to the Sudanese people across refugee camps and other areas, meeting with our African partners and others who can help us to end this war and bring justice and democracy to the people of Sudan.
Now, let's take a look at the markets. Last week, the local stock market closed positively, with the all-share index rising about 0.99% day on day. That was on Friday, and 2.61% week on week, reaching 101,330.85 points. Buy interest in MTN, Zenith Bank, and Dangote Sugar countered sell-offs in FBN Holdings, Transcorp, and Fidelity Bank, keeping the markets buoyant as at Friday last week. Now, the year-to-date return improved by about 35.52%, with the market cap settling at 57.30 trillion naira. Meanwhile, on the money market, system liquidity stayed negative at 2.22 trillion naira due to increased SLF window and NTB auction activities. The Treasury bills market traded calmly with focus on select bills, while the local bond market traded quietly with rising yields. For the Euro bond market, we saw mixed sentiments, and at the NAFEX window, that's NAFEM, yes, the autonomous foreign exchange market, the naira fell to 1,627 naira 40 kobo to $1 as of Friday last week. Let's move over to foreign markets now, and we'll begin in the U.S., where U.S. stock futures fell this morning in early trade. European markets opened negatively, while Japan's stocks led regional losses, possibly influencing rate decisions. And in Japan, of course, there are also reports that the country is just gradually slipping from a technical recession. For oil, we're seeing that prices of oil trading at around $81.60 per barrel, while gold prices are pausing their rally due to U.S. labor market concerns and the Federal Reserve remarks. All right, let's quickly take a break, and when we return from the break, we will get into an extensive conversation. We are critically looking at President Tinubu's economic reforms. What are the costs of these reforms? Is it one step in, one step out? The president makes a pronouncement today. Tomorrow, he retracts it. How do we even protect the poor and the vulnerable at this time of economic crisis, as it were? Though the federal government has said there's no economic crisis, but is it just talk? Do you need to tell us we have an economic crisis or we are all feeling it? So we'll be chatting with my guest after the break. Don't forget to connect with us on all our social media handles. You can send your comments, your questions, your opinions to all the handles on the screen right about now. Let's quickly take a break. We'll be right back.
We can do it. We can build our country for the sake of millions of the people. Delivery, yes, we must achieve it.
It could seem impossible because you don't dream big. When you have this mentality of an achiever, nothing is impossible.
So don't take on too much commercial or private debt so you can service. Any country, if you can service, if you're generating enough revenue from investing that money, fine. But if you're not, you have to be extremely careful because debt relief is not easy.
Hard decisions have been taken and they are required to help us because the central bank can't do it on its own. It has to work very closely with the fiscal side. One without the other is like that famous adage of clapping with one hand. It won't go anywhere.
The last thing central banks want is the financial system, the tail of the dog, to start wagging the body of the dog, which is the economy itself. They don't want a feedback loop from bad finance to bad economics.
This is Moneyline with Nancy, and I am Nancy Nnaji, where I consistently give you a dose of finance, economy, markets, as well as investment information. All right, welcome back to the program. My guest is joining me right now. He's Mr. Femi Oladeni. He is the senior partner at Argentile Capital Partners. Hello, Femi, and welcome bright and early Monday to you.
Hi, Nancy. Confirm you can hear me clearly.
Yes,
An absolute pleasure to be with you again.
Yes, I can confirm I can hear you clearly. Now, Femi, let's start with this. The Minister of Information and National Orientation just a few days ago said that Nigeria's economy is not distressed. Let's begin from that point. What do you think? Are we in an economic crisis?
So, I mean, look, I think that the government is always going to take a perspective that probably is different from the perspective of the average Nigerian. Now, if you look at some of the hard data that have come out, and I've seen that being touted by government, GDP growth in 2023 was positive, probably about 2.83%. They would also use the performance of the Nigerian stock market as a good matrix. However, if you were asking the average Nigerian on the streets, if they felt that the quality of their lives was better in 2023 than prior years, I think the first response you would get would be probably mixed, but I think majority of the people would say that their lives are worse off. So if you're using government speak, it is reach for the minister or for the spokesperson to conclude that Nigeria is not in an economic crisis. But we all economists know that all of the variables show us that this has probably been the worst economic performance that this country has had since the early 90s. And we can look at all the matrix to verify that. So are we in a crisis? Maybe a crisis doesn't describe it, but definitely in a very difficult economic environment.
I liked your analysis, because when the minister also mentioned same, I had to look at the numbers again, and I said in my mind, I said, the numbers are telling me a different story from what you're saying.
Absolutely.
And my pockets are feeling, are feeling weighed by pressures of a hard economic environment. In fact, a few people have said that we are not in renewed hope times. This is renewed hardship for Nigeria. Yes, I've heard that. And I really want to ask you this from what you just said, that perhaps this is the worst time we're passing through as an economy. What would you say about the last 8 years of Buhari, when we had 2 recessions, 1 pandemic, GDP growth? Of course, we had recessions, 2 recessions, so that means we had negative economic growth. What is the difference between then and now? Because people are even saying that Buhari's time now is better. I don't know why in Nigeria, any president that comes is always worse off than the last one. So from your own analysis, yes.
So look, Nancy, I would say that we all know that the Buhari government was probably the worst government
it was a disaster
in a long time. Yes. And the problems were both monetary and fiscal. And I think that's why the Buhari's government is probably seen in a worse light. Now, the challenges we've had in the last 8 months would make people forget the difficulties that the Buhari government actually created. And to a large extent, like I say to people, that the challenges we are experiencing now are actually a direct fallout of the incompetence of the Buhari government. And I think that there is no debate about that. Monetary policy was a big problem. The Naira became, a currency that was printed in unprecedented levels. Not even the military regimes of Babangida and Abacha printed as much Naira as the Buhari government did. And in addition to that, of course, we had COVID-19. So you could always say that, look, there were external factors that impacted probably the first term towards the beginning of the second term. However, I think that the foundations for a terrible economy were already laid during his first term, when he came in, reversed some of the policies that we had seen during the Jonathan era, and started to almost took Nigeria back to a socialist economy, where businesses were struggling with the sort of policies, and we had literally, a finance minister, if I recall, I can't even remember her name. That was how irrelevant she was in the scheme of things, and you just literally had an economy that was running on autopilot, without any form of clear policies. Now, if you juxtapose that against the current government, who have actually been very aggressive and active on the policy front, you would say that perhaps there is some light at the end of the tunnel, even though I think that some of those policies could have been better thought through. Some of those policies should have had significantly more dialogue around them before they are announced, and then you would actually then be able to say that there is significant acceptance by the people or by average Nigerians of what the future is going to look like. So, I mean, I think comparing this government to the Buhari government, it would always make this government look like very competent. I think the benchmark should always go back to the Obasanjo and Jonathan regimes, where Nigeria obviously had, proper leaders and economic teams who understood economics and made policies on the basis of that.
Now, Femi, do you have a sense of Tinubu's economic agenda? I've read a lot of stuff that has come out from this administration, even pre-election, the economic agenda, the renewed hope agenda, and I've read it back to back and all of that. But with what I'm seeing right now, I don't know if you struggle with a sense, making a sense of what President Tinubu's economic agenda is, especially with all the pronouncements that have been done. Sometimes he will make this pronouncement, he will go back. Take a look at the one on customs, the one on, is it foreign expatriates? Yes, a whole lot of them. A few subsidies gone. Now there is subsidy going on, and even at a higher cost. So I'm struggling to know what President Tinubu's economic agenda is. Is it neoliberal? I don't understand.
So actually, and in fairness to this government, I think there is some level of clarity as to how they see the economy running. Okay. They've been very clear that they like a pro-market economy. They've been very clear that they want market forces to play a more active role in the way the economy evolves. The challenges they've had, again, honestly, in fairness, is that they inherited a dire economic situation. And it's meant that even when the policies have come out with the best of intentions, the actual performance of the economy or the overhang, the hangover of Buhari's policies means that the effects of the policies are either negatively impacting on the people or they drag on growth and expansion. So I would say that there is a clarity in terms of what they want to do. There is a clarity in terms of the outcomes that they're looking for. However, the policy pathway and the policy decisions that need to be taken and how and when those decisions need to be taken is probably where we're seeing some form of lag. Now, in fairness, Nancy, 8 months is a very short time to start to benchmark or to start to ask questions about economics. We all know that they're leading and they're lagging indicators.
Femi, I may disagree with you a bit there. If you say 8 months is a short time, yeah. Because we also saw that during Buhari's days, 8 months was a long time, and 8 months down the line actually gave us 8 years of suffering. If you can remember, when Buhari came in 2015, yes, he didn't appoint his people. 2015. Yes, and Nigeria began to nosedive from that time. So I slightly disagree with you if you're telling me that 8 months is such a short time. Because 8 months is enough time to put a foundation together. If you go back to the US, during Obama days, when we had the financial... 8 months was such a long time, Femi. 8 months can actually cascade you into either progress or retrogression.
Yes. So Nancy, you're actually making my argument, believe it or not. You're helping me make my argument.
Because I heard that 8 months is a short time.
My point. No, it is actually. In fairness, it is. I would say this to you, with the exception of the exchange rate liberalization and the removal of policy, the truth is that we haven't really seen the impact of any of the major policies that the Tinubu government has brought into the country. So let me give you an example. Food security. We've only had one harvest cycle under this government, and so you would understand that the economic crisis that we have today is not a fallout of this government, especially when it comes to food prices. The foundations of that started under the Buhari government with the lax security infrastructure, farmers not being able to go to the farms. And the impact is that when the harvest season started in August of last year, the farmers literally had nothing to harvest. And the impact of that is what we are feeling today. So it's important that we understand that policies take time to actually filter through into the system, even though there are some policies that have immediate impact. And I've alluded to that, the currency and fuel prices. However, there are certain things that this government is starting to do that gives us hope that at least there is a clarity in terms of the direction. And I think that's where Nigerians should understand now that there is clarity in terms of direction. Whether it's positive or negative, at the end of the day, businesses can actually plan. We now understand what the central bank is trying to do, not the confusion we had under Emefiele. This central bank governor has been consistent in his message that his focus is on price stabilization and inflation targeting. We never had that sort of rhetoric. I mean, we had a CBN governor that was willing to fight Aboki effects. So let's place them, in the same bucket. This government has inherited a very difficult economic environment. Unfortunately, in the rush to show that they were working, they made announcements that was bereft of analysis. I think they've learned significant lessons from that. Well, you might argue that the last one on explicit quotas shows that probably they haven't. But I believe that the foundations that are being laid now, if there is a consistency, if there is better, and this is very important, is if there is better deliberation and dialogue around their policies, if there is better dialogue with the private sector, if there's better dialogue with the key economic drivers, you would start to see those things filter through into the market. And that's where the argument has to be that where I think this government has also struggled is being able to communicate its ideas to Nigerians without being verbose and without being defensive. That has been a major problem. So the information special advisor coming to tell Nigerians that we're not in an economic crisis is at best ridiculous.